Hi, and welcome to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. Today we're going to ask, does your team know that you care about them? Hello, I am Kale Houser, and welcome back to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. Today we're going to talk about a little bit of a general topic about, does your team know that you care about them? And this starts with really the principle or the question you need to ask yourself, do you care about your team? One of our missions at Kale Houser Leadership is to create 1, confident leaders, right? 2, connected leaders, and 3, leaders that are capable of inspiring their teams. And this comes back to the connected part of it. A connected team, I think we can kind of all understand the benefits of when you have a team that's connected and they count on each other, they can trust each other, they see the mutually beneficial relationships that are formed, and that it creates a loyalty in your organization, both to the organization and to the team. But I want to talk about there's this thing that, at least in my experience, isn't often discussed, and that is being intentional as the leader that your team knows that you care about them. Because I think this is such a fundamental requirement for any leader. So you may be asking yourself, well, I'm a part of this massive corporation that has literally thousands of employees all across the world potentially. But I would argue we all have our sphere of influence. Now, certainly we have our personal sphere of influence in our family, in our social circles, whether they be friends, community groups, churches, all kinds of different clubs and organizations we can belong to. But specifically, I'm referring to your work sphere of influence. So again, this podcast is kind of pointed towards leaders, whether they be business owners that have built a team or, mid-level managers or even CEOs of large teams. We all have that sphere of influence. So obviously, at the kind of the base level is a business owner that has, maybe 5 or 10 employees. That is your sphere of influence. That is a perfectly manageable number of employees and teammates that you can handle. Same thing, if you're a mid-level manager in a larger corporation, you've got a sphere of influence. You may be the department head or the division head, and you have, 15, 20, maybe 30 employees that all work and report directly to you. And vice versa, if you're the CEO of this massive large company, you be, say Chase Bank or, pick any large corporation, you have people that report direct to you that you're responsible for. You may not be responsible individually for all your entry-level type workers, but you are responsible to the vice presidents that all report to you. So they are your sphere of influence, who you are responsible for leading and making sure they're a part of your team and the overall organizational goals and buying into the business identity. And then that flows down from there, right? So again, depending on how higher up and how big your organization is, we all have levels of that. But the point being, we all have our immediate sphere that we handle. And that is typically measured on, presumably you have some sort of performance report writing in place, especially for larger organizations that have, HR departments and things, a way to track performance and go from there. You may not, if you're a smaller to medium-sized business and that's something that's on your to-do list, I would highly encourage it. But I'm talking about your sphere with people that you have maybe not daily interactions, but you're certainly more responsible for, and they're in your kind of first level of influence. Okay, so this goes, when you talk about caring for your team and them knowing it, this goes beyond the simple, hey, Monday morning, how was your weekend? What did you do this weekend? Or you get back from a 3-day vacation or, Christmas break if you take that off for your business. What did you do over your holiday vacation? Or they came back from their leave and their vacation time. Hey, how was your trip to, Yellowstone Park or over to Europe or Australia? Whatever the case may be, it kind of doesn't matter because it goes beyond that. That is certainly a good place to start, is showing that interest, but it goes so far beyond that in what a lot of what we've talked about in previous podcasts is trying to understand what are their goals, what motivates them, what's important to them. Are travels and family time, is that the pinnacle of what's important to them? Or is, career advancement, politics, their church, all kinds of different things that people are into, and you need to be, as their leader, at least aware of that and use that as a point of reference to show that you do care about them, assuming that you do. We're going to make a basic assumption that you as the leader do care, in fact, about your organization. So again, whether you're a small group of 10 or a cog in a larger corporation, we each have that sphere of influence. And does your team know that they care about that? So I had a commander in one of my squadron's positions that I have no doubt that he cared about us as a squadron. And as the squadron commander, he was overall responsible for, I want to say there was maybe 60 of us. Someday I'll have to go back and do an actual count. But I want to say about 60 of us military members, anywhere from, the just one rank below him all the way down to the brand new, high schooler that just graduated basic training in his tech school, and, young 18, 19-year-old male or female, man or woman. And he was responsible for all of us. But we didn't all direct report to him. I, as a flight commander at the time, did. He was my direct supervisor, even though he was also the squadron commander. And again, I have no doubt that he cared at some level for all of us, and certainly in varying degrees based on how well he knew us or not. However, he was not intentional about showing it, right? He was, I think, by nature kind of an introvert and kind of a reserved type of a guy. And he never did anything by any stretch malicious. And I'm not getting into that realm. But he did not inspire or connect with us because we just didn't know if he cared or not. He was just kind of this nebulous, that detached leader that kind of sat up in his office, and you rarely saw him except, during maybe our once a week all calls that we would do. And I'll never forget this so specifically. It was during one of, I think it was one of the all calls, or maybe a smaller meeting with just kind of the mid-level managers and officers in the group. And one of my fellow flight commanders was talking about this specific subject, about how our commander kind of seemed to be absent and didn't really care about what was going on in the organization. And he made the comment of, we're here 24/7. We're here on Saturdays and Sundays. And, does our commander ever come in on Saturdays or Sundays? What does that look like? Because his normal hours were Monday through Friday. He needed to be available for all the meetings and things of that nature on the larger part of the organization. But I'll never forget, I think it was either the senior enlisted or his second in command or vice commander, which is our DO in our example, kind of looked at him and goes, "You think he's not here on the weekend?" And we all kind of go, "Of course not. No, he's not here." And he goes, "He's here like for 5, 6, 7, 8 hours every weekend on the Saturday." But the problem was nobody knew it. His office was upstairs, so you came in the front door and he immediately went upstairs, and he stayed in his office the entire day. He never came down and visited with the flights or visited with the members, and we were always floating around, on different shifts and things. It would have been so easy to check in, and I don't know his reasoning. I don't know if it was an efficiency thing, like, oh, I've got so much work to do, I just need to go focus and not worry about all this. But he was definitely not intentional about making sure that he understood what we were going through, by working weekends and nights and all that good stuff. But it was so funny because to the senior leadership, it was obvious. They knew he was coming in. But to what I would say the middle and all the way down to the new airmen in our squadron, nobody knew. They had no clue that was part of his, weekly ritual, that he came in to do all those things, because it didn't matter to us, right? It certainly had impacts on us as part of the squadron. I'm sure what he was doing, was for the good of the squadron. But again, nobody knew. And this may come out of modesty. This may come out of not wanting to be, like, hey, look at me, I'm doing all these things and da-da-da-da-da. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about forming relationships and connections with your team members. It would have been such a simple thing for, even when he was done with his work, shuts down his computer, he's getting ready to go home back to his family, to take that 5-minute cruise through the ops floor, to even say, hey guys, thanks for being here. Hey, is anything going on that needs my attention? And it's the quick thumbs up. No, we're good, sir. Have a great rest of your weekend. And then it's kind of in that back of your brain of like, wow, cool. Like, he actually cares about us, that he stopped by and cared enough to inquire, instead of just relying on the official channels to get word back to him if anything went wrong or if anything exceptionally went right. So I want to encourage you to be intentional with that, to be genuine in how you care and how you interact with people. And certainly this will take a time piece. This can't be done quickly. This can't be done all at once. It will take time, both on the daily interactions, right? You can't just top in for that 30 seconds like, hey, how you doing? All right, great. Hey, have a good day. And then it will take an extended time period over several days, weeks, months, even years, right, to kind of show and develop that relationship. Because it's just like any other relationship, you're developing it piecemeal, a little bit at a time. Kind of the flip side of this, my wife had an interesting interaction in one of her jobs when we had first got stationed in Florida. Back when I first came into the Air Force, we're originally from Washington State, northern state, and if you don't know this, if you haven't moved around a lot, different states have kind of different feels in the way they do things, right? The southern states are kind of known for a little bit slower pace, certainly friendlier and all that kind of stuff, versus your more metropolitan epicenters are faster paced and they're more production oriented. And that's kind of what we had come out of, not knowing it. That was totally normal to us, that pace of work. And my wife got this job at a property management company in Florida. It was with the tourism company. They were responsible for tourism development in that county. And she actually got talked to because she would come in, hey, good morning, go straight to her desk, boom, 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 start working. Like that's what was normal for us. That was what it was expected from the work environments that we had been in up to that point. But she kind of started to earn this reputation with the other ladies of being a snob, of being kind of snooty and not interested in other people. And her supervisor actually had to come to her and say, hey, you're doing great work here. We love having you here, but you're starting to develop this reputation. And I, as your supervisor, this is my wife's supervisor talking to her, I give you permission to take that extra 5-10 minutes in the morning, to take that extra, couple minutes in the afternoon to stop and just kind of chit chat and catch up with the girls that you work with, because they were all females in that department. And kind of connect in that way. And I always thought that was so interesting because that was their culture. That was the culture that she, as the supervisor, was trying to build in her organization, was one of, you could kind of count on each other, you could trust each other, you could go to each other. She was creating a very specific culture that my wife was not adhering to. And it was certainly not something discussed in the interview or anything of that nature. It wasn't to that degree, but it was more as part of that regional culture and then applied, more specifically to her workplace, which was really, it was eye-opening to us at the time, especially being younger. But it's something that I've carried with me for a long time as I've gone through different jobs and different levels of responsibility. And certainly my wife, Liz, has as well. But I want to encourage you to, based on what your culture is in your environment, adjust how you interact and connect with your people and be intentional to show them, in order to build that culture, to become connected, in order to eventually be able to inspire them, show them that you do in fact care about what is going on in their life. You do in fact care about what is interested to them, right? And it may not actually be interesting to you. They could be super into football and, the Pittsburgh Steelers are their absolute end all be all. You get that a lot with Green Bay fans, and you could literally care less about football, and you're more of a soccer person, right? But that is kind of doesn't really matter. You want to talk about creating that, and you could even turn it into like a rivalry, of that informal, friendly rivalry. It's not real football, back and forth, the European American type football thing. So I want you to encourage you, be intentional. It may seem a little bit, almost snooty to start with, but as long as you don't approach it that way, of it being all about me and I want to make sure that my face is shown, you turn it into about your employees, you turn it about your teammates and how you can best honor them and encourage them and show that you do care, which will flow into all kinds of other areas as they begin to trust you more as they see that. All right. Well, thank you so much again for joining me, Kale at kalehouserleadership.com. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share. It would be super helpful for me and the channel. I look forward to talking to you on the next podcast. Have a fantastic afternoon, no matter where you're at in the world. Bye.